welcome to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament is a 1517 Podcast Network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast and check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. While you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that 1517 is doing. Articles, events, academies, all the stuff. You want to check all of that out. And, of course, while you're over there, hit that donate link so you can support all that stuff. Keep it all free. That would be great. If you already do that, thank you very much. You do, in fact, make it all possible. We are in Isaiah chapter 35. We have been hearing about some ransomed people. There is a promise being made that God is going to strengthen some weak hands. He's going to make some feeble knees firm. He's going to get all that stuff up. He's going to take your anxious heart and say, hey, don't worry about it. I got it. Literally, behold your God, which is the same as saying, watch this. And what are you going to watch? You're going to watch him come save you. That's what we ended with. And this is what, yeah, I don't know, by the time this releases, of course, this will be not true, but the lectionary text, if you're a church that follows the lectionary this week, you had one of the statements by Jesus that I think people sometimes struggle with, and he just says, hey, don't be anxious about anything. Which is, of course, is like the least helpful thing. I don't know if you've ever had someone worrying about something, and then you tell them, "Hey, you tried not worrying about it," and that's not like helpful at all. And so, when Jesus says, "Hey, here I got a recommendation for you. Don't worry about anything at any time, any day." You're like, "Gee, thanks a lot." The reason, though, that it is comforting is because of who is saying it. And so what Jesus is saying is what is happening here, which is, hey, you have an anxious heart? Watch this.
It makes all the difference as to who says it. If you're a little child and you're scared and your dad that you look up to says, it's fine, don't worry, I've got this. Yeah, well, that can calm your worries. And that's exactly what God is doing here for us. So 35 is the perfect follow-up to 34. 34 was about basically uncreation. 35 is about recreation. And so we have in these first four verses this overturning of the uncreation to a new creation, where a wilderness and a dry land is going to turn into a flower garden, more or less. And people with weak hands and feeble knees, well, they're not going to be weak and feeble anymore. And the reason is, of course, because God has shown up. In fact, hasn't just shown up, but he is coming and will save you. And that's the way that verse 4 ends. So that is a perfect segue into verse 5. So God's shown up, all right, and he's going to save you, okay? Well, you can't hear those words. God shows up, going to save you. Well, that, of course, instantly the New Testament clicks into place. You're like, well, this is clearly in reference to Jesus. And the fact that it's clearly in reference to Jesus is underscored by the very next words. So I'll read 5, 6, and 7. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute sing for joy. For waters break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning land shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. In the haunt of jackals where they lie down, the grass shall become reeds and rushes. Of course, the end of that is echoing what was said at the beginning of the chapter, where you have this transformation of creation from deserts and dry land and the haunts of jackals into basically a paradise. So if you want to, you can think of these kinds of images where a dead creation, we might say, like a desert, becomes a living creation, or sand becomes a rose garden. All of that is basically saying that God is going to take Genesis 1 and 2, especially Genesis 2, where you have Eden, a paradise, where creation is just the way that God wants it to be, and he's going to bring that back, but in an even better sort of way. So that's the creation images. But it starts out by pointing to the way that not just kind of creation as we usually think about it, but our created bodies have gone wrong. Because one of the effects of the fall was not just that now we have guilt and shame and that the wages of sin is death. So it's not just those kinds of, what you might think of as maladies that we suffer, even though death, of course, is a physical thing. But it's also all the things that go wrong with our bodies. I mean, why do people get cancer today? Why do people have heart attacks? Why do all the things happen to our bodies that go wrong, including all of these things that people are, sometimes born with or that happen to them later on, like they're blind or they're deaf or they get hurt and now they're lame or they can't talk. I mean, all of these are the effects of the fall. And what Jesus is going to do when this God who comes to save us, one of the things he's going to do, of course, is to begin this process in his ministry of overcoming these, of healing these, that not only points to the fact that he is God, the creator who's come to save us, but also that he is the restorer of creation. He's the one who comes to make right what's gone wrong. Well, that's a look backwards to Genesis. At the same time, every healing that Jesus does is also a foretaste of the resurrection, which is the final healing, when our bodies will be not just kind of repaired, but glorified to be just the way God wants them to be, even better than the body that Adam and Eve had prior to the fall.
Yeah, whenever I think about God telling Adam, hey, that you eat of the fruit of that tree, you shall surely die, and you hear Paul say the wages of sin is death. The way I usually think about that is that it's not as though like the wages of sin is execution, or that God said, the day you eat of the fruit of that tree, you will be executed. Mm-hmm. But more that the wages of sin is dying, and everything that entails, right? So it's not just that. Yeah, if you're a sinner, at some point everything will be, you'll be just all good, and then the bill will come due, and then you'll be executed. No, it's like death is everywhere. Like it's permeated everything, and so like the effects of death is what you're surrounded by. So the wages of sin is just the dying of things, and this is what Jesus comes. When Jesus comes, what you see is that. There's you get this glimpse of what he's really about, because there's just like this wake of like healing and restoration. He's like all this reversal all the time with him, and yeah, you get to see that like Jesus doesn't ever like have someone like say, hey, I'm blind, I would like to see it, and be like, no. It doesn't happen.
Sorry, too busy.
It doesn't happen. No. There's no one no one dies that then they around Jesus, and then they're like, hey, could you do something about that? And he's like, no, I can't, because it's who he is. Like he is there to do that work, and that's what you see in when he shows up. You get like this really vivid picture of like what things are going to be like.
Yeah, so his miracles, this is kind of the Sunday school version of his miracles. Why did Jesus work miracles? To show us how powerful he was. Well, okay. Yeah, agreed. I mean, he certainly shows his power in doing this, but it's much deeper and much broader than that. It's everything we've been talking about. And at the same time, and this is more like a deeper level of what we've been describing. At the same time, it is also him demonstrating by his actions that he is in fact the Messiah. So, and this section of Isaiah is one that I turn to on a pretty regular basis when I like to talk about how Jesus fulfilled the promises and the prophecies about the Messiah. And to do that, I'll take people to Matthew 11. Now, this is when it's a well-known scene. John the Baptist has been arrested. He's in prison, and he sends two of his disciples. Keep in mind, he's in prison. Things have not gone well for John. Now he's incarcerated, and he's going to lose his head very soon. He sends two of his disciples, and they are to ask Jesus, are you the coming one, the expected one, or should we look for somebody else? And I've always appreciated Jesus' response here because, you would expect him to say something like, yes, I'm the coming one. I am. Go back and tell John, don't worry, I am the coming one. You don't need to be looking for someone else. Jesus doesn't give them that response at all. Here's what he says. This is Matthew 11. Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk. Lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up, and the poor have good news preached to them. And blessed is the one who is not offended by me. That's a typical Jesus answer. It's not a yes or no, but it's the answer that they actually need. What is he saying? Well, go back and tell John everything that you're seeing happening around you, all of these healings, and the fact that the poor have the gospel preached to them. In other words, this is the way I take Jesus' words. Go back and tell John to remember what Isaiah described the ministry of the God who comes to save us would look like. And that's exactly what we have happening in Isaiah 35. So go back and tell John, basically, remember Isaiah, look at what I'm doing, there's your answer. Of course I'm the coming one. Look at what I'm doing. I'm doing exactly what Isaiah, all these centuries beforehand, said the Messiah would do, the God who comes to save us. So, this is one of the ways that Jesus is who he claims to be. He, in fact, fulfills exactly what the prophets had described. So these healings, they're proof of his power. They're proof of the fact that he's the Messiah. This is a re-Edening of the world, and it's also a foretaste of the resurrection of the body and the life of the world to come. All that's happening in the healing ministry of Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I always think about when John asked that, too, if he was also kind of wondering, are you going to get me out of here?
Yes. Oh, I'm sure he was wondering that. Yeah. Yeah, are you going to, is part of your ministry also going to be somehow, opening the doors and letting me free?
Yeah, I know, and I think John's like, hey, I'd love to follow you. Yeah. But that was not
can't do that from jail cell.
Part of Jesus' response.
No. Yeah. Well, he witnessed in his own way, of course, by his preaching, but then also by his martyrdom, which means he's a witness.
Yeah, a
witness of the God who comes to save us and who will resurrect the body of John when that day comes. All right, so we got 3 more verses in this chapter, and we're going to switch here to an Exodus image. So that's one of the things I really enjoy about Isaiah 35 is it puts together 2 themes that the scriptures are constantly weaving together, and that's creation or recreation, and then redemption, and that redemption is often pictured in terms of a exodus or a coming home, a homecoming. So here we have a lot of creation imagery in those opening 7 verses, whether it's kind of nature or whether it's the physical body. And now we're going to switch to these exiles coming home. So creation, Exodus, or we might say even Genesis themes and Exodus themes. So I'm going to read 8 through the very end, 8 through 10. A highway shall be there, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it. It shall belong to those who walk on the way. Even if they are fools, they shall not go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come up on it. They shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads, and they shall obtain gladness and joy and sorrow, and sighing shall flee away. Man, this sounds like it could have been, I could finish that and say, and that's the way that Revelation 21 reads, because it's very much kind of this revelation, especially that closing part, very much revelation language. So we have here a highway. Highways, that's a good translation of the Hebrew. Highways were a thing in the ancient world. Of course, literally a highway is a way which is a little bit higher. It's a raised platform of sorts. And of course, that's the same way that our highways are constructed today. And that's similar to the way that roads were constructed in the ancient world. So it wasn't just the Romans who built roads. You had roads, you had highways long before that, some of which ran along the Sea of Galilee from Egypt all the way up towards Syria. And you had the King's Highway, which ran from Egypt kind of around the southern edge of the Dead Sea and then up in the Transjordan area. So roads, highways were nothing new in the ancient world. So this imagery would have been familiar to Isaiah's hearers. This way, though, is not your regular, I-40 or whatever it might be, but it's the way of holiness, and no unclean shall pass over it. So this is the way for those who are sanctified by the sanctifying work of God. The people that he has made holy are on this holy way, and they're journeying. And the way is so clear that even if you're kind of a silly person, you can't get lost. It's just you don't need a GPS. Even if they're fools, they shall not go astray. So, there are people who get lost pretty easily. You're not going to get lost on this highway. I mean, it's like right there. It's obvious. No GPS needed. No, great bastion of wisdom and know-how needed. Even if you're a silly person, you can't get lost. It's just right there. It's obvious. And you're going to be safe. No lions, no ravenous beasts are going to be around there. So God has removed these threats from all the people who are traveling in it. They're called the redeemed. They're called the ransomed, meaning that they haven't redeemed themselves or ransomed themselves, of course, but they have been redeemed and ransomed by God. He has done the saving, redeeming, ransoming work. And they're on a journey. They're coming home. They're coming to Zion. And they're coming to Zion not mute and morose, but joyful, singing with joy on their heads, because sorrow and sighing has fled away. So this is drawing. I mean, there are some kind of Genesis images with no lions or ravenous beast, but mainly this is Exodus language. The people of God have been dispersed. They've been spread everywhere, but now they're coming home. God is bringing them home because he's redeemed them, he's ransomed them, and their destination is assured, and their destination is Zion, which Revelation will call the New Jerusalem. So this is basically depicting the work of the Messiah in ransoming, in redeeming, and bringing people to the road, the way of holiness. And we are on this journey, walking toward the New Jerusalem, where finally sorrow and sighing shall flee away.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of know that these people have been made holy, because obviously some of them are not like the, exceptional. This is not like the way of exceptional people on this highway. No, it's like some of them are pretty foolish, but it's gonna be okay, because this holiness isn't theirs anyway. And you got this phrase I think is important. You have like the redeemed shall walk there, the ransomed, but he doesn't leave you any room to miss what's going on here. I mean, the phrase "the ransomed of the Lord." I mean, that means that. I mean, the ransomed of the Lord are those ransomed by the Lord. That's how that works, right?
Yeah, that's how that works. They haven't, somehow come up with the ransom money, and they've paid the price to free themselves. Yeah, they're only ransomed because God stepped up and he did what needed to be done, just like he did with the people of Israel in Egypt. I mean, they were there for a long time. They didn't leave. They couldn't leave. They were slaves. They were trapped. They were bound. They were unable to, even if they could, they were unable to pay any kind of ransom by which to get rid of their chains and be set free. So the only way that they got out of Egypt was by God doing all the work of getting them out of Egypt. He did the redeeming. He did the ransoming. He sent Moses, who didn't even want to go, of course. So God alone did the work of making this happen. Which, of course, when you translate this into what's happening with us, it's nothing different. It wasn't like, Jesus did that 99%, Dan, but we got to contribute our 1%. We got to do our part to make sure that we're fully ransomed and fully redeemed. That's nothing we could do. God did it all.
Yeah, and I think in the context of Isaiah too, I mean, think about what we've been talking about for a while now, is the sort of their propensity to want to be delivered by some other peoples, right? So, I mean, we've heard over and over again, hey, I'd really rather you not go down to Egypt. I'm really serious about this. Like, don't go to Egypt and have them. They're not going to save you. Yeah, so this isn't those ransomed by Egypt or redeemed by Egypt. Like, that's not it either. So it's not, you can't do it. And not only can you not do it, neither can anyone else. There's only God can do it. There is no other person or peoples or army or nation. No one's going to ransom you or deliver you. Like, this has to be God.
Yeah, which is such assurance. I mean, it's such comfort, because that means that, well, if he's done it, it's got to be perfect. God doesn't do things halfway. He doesn't, almost save me. No, it's all done. It's complete. That means that I can rest in it without wondering if I have done enough or if I've been sincere enough in my contribution, or all those other things that just bedevil people who think that they have to somehow make a little bit of contribution to their salvation. Well, if God's done it, it's complete.
Or you also, I mean, if somebody else does it, now you're indebted. I mean, this is sort of thing. Like, so the nice thing about God's salvation is He doesn't ask you to pay Him back, or He doesn't tell you that, like, well, you have this tremendous debt now. So, I mean,
it's work.
Of course, this is the way it works. If a nation does that, like, they're not going to do it for nothing.
Yeah. I don't. In politics, if I scratch your back, well, I expect something else, and that's going to be you scratching mine. Yeah, Jesus doesn't come along and say, all right, I've redeemed you, I've ransomed you. Man, you owe me big time. And pay up, otherwise I'll put you right back where I had you before. No, it doesn't work that way. It wouldn't be grace if it were otherwise. It'd be something totally different. Okay, I guess we're ready for a little historical parentheses, right? I mean, we've been in poetry for quite a while. We've been covering over these last few chapters a lot of woes. I heard a lot about Assyria, heard a lot about Babylon, but a whole lot about Assyria and Egypt and Israel. So this has been sort of actually a way of preparing us for what we're about to hear next, because in chapter 36 of Isaiah, we're going to switch into a historical narrative that's going to take us through Isaiah 36, 37, 38, 39. So it's quite a lengthy portion. There's some poetry that's woven in there. And some of this is going to be familiar to you, especially if you've been listening to 40 Minutes for a while, because what happens in Isaiah 36 and following is paralleled sometimes verbatim, not always. And there are some details Isaiah has that you don't have elsewhere. But a lot of this is going to match up with 2 Kings 18 and 19. So there are some verbatim parallels, or some things which are close, not quite. And there's some new material that Isaiah adds as well. We'll leave the debate aside as to who borrowed from whom, or whether they're in fact actually using a common source. We really don't know, so that's just a scholarly debate that can be dealt with at another time. But either way, we're going to cover some material that we've covered before. So we'll start out here with 36 and kind of get our historical bearings by reading these first 3 verses. So this is the 14th year of King Hezekiah. In that 14th year, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. And the king of Assyria sent the Rabshakeh, however you want to pronounce that. It's a title. It's not a personal name. That's not the name his mama gave him. It means chief cupbearer. This was some sort of military commander, so maybe that was the traditional title, but he had other roles at this point because he does have a cup in his hand. But the Rabshakeh, he came from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem with a great army. And he stood by the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the washer's field. And there came out to meet him some officials. These are officials sent by King Hezekiah, and their names are Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna, the secretary, and Joah, the son of Asaph, the recorder. So that's a kind of a whole lot of details that are set there. So first of all, just to kind of get your historical bearings, this is 701 BC. So 700 years approximately before the birth of Jesus. So that's the 14th year of King Hezekiah. So he's the king who is in Jerusalem. Hezekiah is a good king. That's an important thing to bear in mind. I mean, we got a whole lot of bad kings, and we got some that are truly horrific kings. I mean, just terrible, terrible, wicked kings who did some just atrocious things. And then we have a handful of guys who were, they weren't perfect, but they were pretty good kings. And one of those pretty good kings is Hezekiah. His dad is Ahaz. Now, we heard about Ahaz earlier in Isaiah. He was the king back in Isaiah 7 when you had a very similar situation happening. In fact, I was just noticing today that when these Assyrian officials came, they stood, we're told, by the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the washer's field. That's the exact same place that we heard about back in Isaiah 7 when Ahaz was confronted and basically told, if you believe in God, everything's going to be okay. If you trust in him, everything's going to be okay. If you don't, everything's going to come undone. And the father of Hezekiah, Ahaz, would not believe. In fact, he put his trust in the Assyrians. So anyway, this is King Hezekiah, son of a bad king, but King Hezekiah, he's a good guy, like Josiah, another later king. And then you have Sennacherib, king of Assyria. So he's a few years into his reign. His dad was Sargon II, who was killed on the battlefield. His body never recovered. Sennacherib took over, and he's basically been doing a mopping up operation, dealing with some rebellious Babylonians, and now he's going to deal with King Hezekiah. Now, he's come up, and we're told that he's already taken out a bunch of fortified cities. And we know this not only from the biblical record, but we also know from a very, very famous wall relief. You can see it today in the British Museum in London, of the siege of Lachish, where you have all the details there. I mean, you got people who are impaled. You got guys who are being killed. The Lachish was under siege. It was taken by the Assyrians, and the devastation they wrought there was just terrible. I mean, they found a mass grave with, I think, like 1,500 skulls in it. Just a lot of terrible violence that took place there. Well, that was one of the 46 cities that the Assyrians took, and now they're coming up to Hezekiah at Jerusalem, and his officials are going out to meet them. And then one more detail before I stop. Now, keep in mind that at this point, Hezekiah has already paid off Sennacherib. So we know this from 2 Kings. He's already paid him off. So it's like he's a traitor. He's gone back on his word. King Hezekiah pays him off, and then he still attacks. He's going to still surround Jerusalem and demand that the city surrender to them. So not only is he an Assyrian who's out to take out all these other fortifications, all these other cities, but he's been paid off, and he ignores that as if he didn't even receive payment, Hezekiah, and now he's going to demand the city surrender.
Whenever I think about Hezekiah and Josiah, I always think about them as like these two kings that were really good. They were just too late.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Right?
Yes.
You're like, oh man, for you guys had only been around like a little earlier. But and that's kind of the impression you get in Kings and stuff too. It's like, yeah, these guys are really good, but it's just too late.
Yeah. It's like if you think of Israel as kind of a body, they've had this cancer for a long time, and they've been weakening and weakening and weakening, and then along come a couple of possible cures named Josiah and Hezekiah, but it's too late. The body's too far gone. I mean, maybe they can give a few months or a few more years of life, but the cancer is going to take the body.
Yeah.
And that death will be the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem and the Babylonian exile. But yeah, that's right. I mean, if Hezekiah had been the son of David, and then maybe Josiah, the grandson of Hezekiah, or something like that, yeah, then maybe we'd have a lot shorter Old Testament. we wouldn't have all these prophetic oracles against Israel. But yeah, it was really too late at this point to save the nation.
I mean, this is also, is it any surprise that they tried to pay him off, and then he was like, "Hey, thanks. I think I'm going to go take all the rest of it too."
Yeah. It was as terrible, traitorous an action as it was, at the same time, it was politically smart, because now Hezekiah has paid him off. He's given him all this money. Now he can't use that same money that he might have used to buy an ally.
Yeah,
who's going to help him against hire some mercenaries, or maybe get whoever on his side. Well, he doesn't have the money anymore. He's already paid it to the Assyrians. All right, so we got this little political meeting that's going to take place out in the open between these three representatives of the city of Jerusalem, three representatives of the king, and then the Ravshakeh, along with these other guys that are with him. So he's got a little speech he's going to deliver. This speech is intended for Hezekiah, but as we'll hear, it's also intended for everyone who is sitting on the walls of Jerusalem looking at this and evidently able at least to hear some of the conversation that's going on. So the Assyrian representative, the Ravshakeh, said to them, "Say to Hezekiah, thus says the great king, the king of Assyria," the Assyrian kings, very humbly like to refer to themselves as the great king, or the king of kings, right? A lot of humility in those Assyrian monarchs. And here's what they say. Here's what he says, rather. "On what do you," I guess we could literally translate this, "trust this trust of yours?" So rest this trust of yours is actually the verb for trust. So you've got a verb and a noun that's used here. Hebrew loves to do that. So what do you trust this trust? You rest this trust of yours. "Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? In whom do you now trust, that you have rebelled against me? Behold, you are trusting in Egypt, that broken reed of a staff, which will pierce the hand of any man who leans on it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who trust in him. But if you say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar," meaning the altar at the temple. "Come now, make a wager with my master, the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses, if you are able on your part to set riders on them. How can you then repulse a single captain among the least of my master's servants when you trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Moreover," you can see he's just building this argument, "moreover, is it without the Lord that I have come up against this land to destroy it? The Lord said to me," "the Lord said to me," says this Assyrian messenger, "go up against this land and destroy it." Well, there's no humility in the messenger of this great king either, right? This is quite the political speech. So I mean, there's parts of it that are accurate, right? When he starts out talking about, hey, you made the wrong political decision when you put your trust in the Egyptians, because you know what they're like? They're like leaning on a sharp, broken piece of wood. Guess what that's going to do? It's going to pierce right into your hand. That's what it's going to do. You lean on that, you trust in that, well, you're going to suffer the consequences of that. So that's his first argument. Trusting in Egypt, bad move, Hezekiah.
God agrees with this
right.
with this argument so far.
So far good. Yeah. But then he messes up, and he just keeps getting worse and worse. You know, he says, "Are you going to say that you trust in Yahweh, your God? Well, look at what Hezekiah has done." This is the bad Assyrian theology, because he says, "Oh, look at Hezekiah. He got rid of all those country altars, all those high places, and made everybody worship at this one altar." Well, yeah, Hezekiah did that. You know why he did that? Because that's what God wanted to be done. That's precisely what God had commanded. But then when he really gets to way, way, way too far and commits nothing short of blasphemy, I suppose we'd call it, is when he claims that the Lord spoke to the king of Assyria, Sennacherib, and said, "Go up and destroy this land." So that's his speech to the representatives of Hezekiah as well as to people who were listening.
Maybe this king got word that God had told Isaiah, "Behold, I am sending the Assyrians." He's like, "All right." Well,
Yeah. Well, here we go. I'm here as the representative of Yahweh to destroy you.
Your own prophet said the Lord was sending me. So here I am.
Yeah, you could definitely see that happening. I mean, spies, of course, are nothing new in our modern world. So I can definitely see spies from Assyria, twisting Isaiah's words around, saying, "Hey, you know what? God really wants you to do? He really wants you to take out Jerusalem."
Yeah, because you got to think. I mean, these people all believe in gods and stuff, and if Isaiah's proclaiming this sort of thing, it wouldn't be that hard to believe that someone might go back and be like, "Hey, they got a prophet that says their own God is sending you to punish them." What about that?
Yeah, hey, I've got divine permission to do all these things. Yeah, I'm looking the biblical text too, and I highlighted all the words here that have to do with trust. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in those verses I read, this initial speech, 7 times you got the word for trust that occurs, which of course is a big word, not just biblically speaking, but it's a big word in Isaiah, and that's really what it's what this whole section boils down to. It's more or less where you're going to put your trust. On whom are you going to lean? Are you going to lean on Egypt, which of course Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem had made the mistake of doing? By this time, the Assyrians have already actually at least once defeated the Egyptians. So, bad choice. Are you going to lean upon, I don't know, some other allies that maybe you can find? Are you going to lean upon some political decisions or whatever it might be? Or are you going to trust in the Lord? Now, according to this Assyrian envoy, he's saying, well, that's a big mistake. You can't trust in the Lord. But that's what this all boils down to. That's really at the core of everything happening here. This is not about politics. It's not about military threats. It's all about where your trust is going to be. Just for Hezekiah, just like it was for his dad. I mean, it was the same with Ahaz. Are you going to trust in the Lord, or are you going to trust in the Assyrians? And now for Hezekiah, it's going to be: are you going to trust in Egypt? Are you going to trust in the Lord? Or who are you going to put your trust in?
It's a pretty big burn in this speech too. Is when this is just intimidation. But when he says, "All right, how about this? I'll give you 2,000 horses because I don't believe you have 2,000 riders."
Yeah, it is a burn.
You're like, man, that is like that is you calling a bluff here. Like, hey, those are some nice walls. Tell you what, I'll make the fight more fair. I'll donate 2,000 horses to your cause. But you don't have anyone to ride them. Yeah, dude, that's rough.
That is rough. Yeah, that's some powerful rhetoric, because when he says things like that, the people inside the city are like, "Oh my gosh, he knows, doesn't he?" This is not good. Yeah, so that's the first part. I think we got time to finish one little section that's next, 11 and 12. So Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah, these 3 Judean Jerusalem representatives, they say to the Rabshakeh, basically, hey, quit speaking in the language that everyone understands. So please speak to us, your servants, in Aramaic, because we understand it. So we know Aramaic by this time was the political language that was spoken. Would have been spoken by the Assyrians, would have been spoken by the Rabshakeh would have known Aramaic, as do these officials. It was kind of the language of the educated, we might say, for sure. So don't speak to us in the language of Judah. So get it. These Assyrians are speaking Hebrew. This guy knows Hebrew, and he is speaking Hebrew on purpose because he wants the people on the wall to hear.
Yeah, he wants the people on the wall to hear him slinging that kind of, those kind of insults at them and strike a bunch of fear in their hearts.
Yeah. So he goes on to say, has my master, talking about Sennacherib, has my master sent me to speak these words to your master and to you, and not to the men sitting on the wall? I picture him kind of looking up when he says those words. He's turning his head, he's looking this way and that to the men on the wall. And here's how he describes their fate. He says, who are doomed with you to eat their own dung and drink their own urine. So the rhetoric just keeps getting harsher and harsher. This course is nothing more than an opportunity for the Assyrians to try and use, it's more or less rhetorical, psychological warfare. We're going to try and make these guys scared to death of what we're going to reduce them to by the time that all is said and done. And he's not finished yet. He's got more to say.
You're basically saying at this point, listen, man, I wasn't sent here just to talk to you. I was sent here to tell all those people that if you make poor decisions, they're all in big trouble. There's no negotiation happening here. I'm just here to inform.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We're not making a deal here. This is just what's going to happen.
Yeah, you can surrender. It gives us, just surrender everything, or you can, eat your own dung and drink your own urine. That's the options. Like that's the end of it.
Yeah, not much of an option there, right?
No, there's not.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a bathroom-ish way to end, but
it is.
We're out of time, so I guess we'll pick up from there.
All right. We'll see you next episode.
See you then.